The cold darkness of space held many secrets. Some were worth finding. Others were better left alone. Commander Vextar pressed his clawed hand against the viewing screen of his ship. His yellow eyes studied the strange object floating in the empty void. The thing was huge, bigger than 3 of his warships put together. It looked old and broken, with dark metal that seemed to eat the light from nearby stars. "What do you think it is?" asked his second officer, a younger Kethvar with green scales instead of Vextar's purple ones. "Human trash," Vextar said with disgust. Just like everything else they left behind in this dead system. The ship drifted slowly through space, dead and silent. No lights, no energy, no signs of life. It had been floating here for who knows how long. Just another piece of junk in the graveyard that used to be the human home system. Vextar had heard the stories about humans. 200 years ago, they had been nothing special. A young race that barely knew how to travel between stars. The Kethvar Empire had crushed them easily, forcing them to run away from their homeworld like scared animals. Now they hid in the dark corners of space, afraid to show their faces. "Sir?" the ship's scanner officer called out. "I'm getting some strange readings from that wreck." "Strange how?" Vextar turned around. His tail swished behind him, showing his annoyance. "There's energy inside it. A lot of energy. But it's not moving or doing anything." Vextar walked over to look at the scanner screens. The numbers made no sense. The human ship looked completely dead. But the energy readings were huge, bigger than what his own ship produced. "That can't be right," he said. "Check your equipment." The scanner officer ran the check 3 times. The results were the same every time. The dead human ship was full of power, just waiting. Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought humans before, back when he was younger. They were weak and their ships were slow, but they were also tricky. They liked to set traps and use tricks instead of fighting fairly. "Send a message to Imperial Command," he ordered. "Tell them we found something interesting." Far away from the cold darkness of space, on a world called New Busan, Captain Lee Dae-ho was having a bad day. He sat in his small office looking at reports that made him angry. The human colonies were arguing again. Some wanted to hide better. Others wanted to fight back against the Empire. Nobody could agree on anything. Dae-ho was tired of hiding. He had been born on Earth back before the Great Escape. He remembered blue skies and real sunlight. He remembered his home burning as the Imperial ships came down from space like angry gods. Now he was 50 years old and still running, still hiding, still afraid. A soft knock on his door made him look up. "Come in." Dr. Park Soo-jin stepped into the room. She was about his age, with gray hair and smart eyes behind her glasses. She had been his friend for 30 years, ever since they escaped Earth together. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice sounded worried. "What's wrong now?" Dae-ho asked. Soo-jin closed the door behind her and activated a small device that would stop anyone from listening to their conversation. "I've been watching the Imperial movements near Sol system. They found something." "Found what?" "A ship. A big one." Soo-jin sat down across from his desk. "My contacts in the Resistance Network sent me some stolen Imperial communications. They're very excited about whatever they discovered." Dae-ho felt his stomach twist. "How big?" "Dreadnought class. Maybe bigger." "That's impossible. We didn't have any ships that big when we left Earth." Soo-jin was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes, we did. One ship. A prototype that was supposed to be destroyed during the evacuation." Dae-ho stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "The Thunderbolt project. I worked on it, Dae-ho. Back before everything went wrong." Soo-jin's hands shook slightly as she spoke. "We built it in secret. It was supposed to be our secret weapon against the Empire. If we had a secret weapon, why didn't we use it? Because it wasn't ready. The AI wasn't fully programmed. The weapon systems weren't tested. When the Empire attacked, the project leaders decided it was too dangerous to try using it." Soo-jin took off her glasses and cleaned them nervously. "They sent it away from Earth with a skeleton crew in orders to self-destruct if anyone tried to board it." Dae-ho felt something cold growing in his chest. "And now the Empire has found it." "Maybe, I don't know for sure. But if they have..." Soo-jin put her glasses back on. "Dae-ho, that ship has technology that's 200 years ahead of anything the Empire has seen from us. If they figure out how it works, they'll know we're not as weak as we pretend to be. Worse than that, they'll know exactly where our colonies are. The Thunderbolt has complete star maps of all our hidden worlds. If the Empire cracks its database..." Daeho stood up quickly, his chair rolling backward. We have to warn the Council. The Council won't listen. You know that. President Yoon thinks any military action is too dangerous. He'd rather let the Empire have one old ship than risk exposing our colonies. Then what do you suggest we do? Sujin looked him straight in the eyes. We go get it back. Daeho laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just the two of us? Against the Imperial fleet? Not just us, your crew. The people who still remember what Earth looked like. Sujin leaned forward. Daeho, that ship isn't just a weapon. It's our history, our legacy, everything we lost when we ran away. Outside Sujin's detector device, neither of them noticed the small listening bug that had been planted in Daeho's office weeks ago. The bug recorded their conversation and sent it through secret channels to someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Back in the Sol system, Commander Vextar received new orders from Imperial Command. Admiral Zekthul himself was coming with the 7th Fleet to investigate the human wreck. That meant 200 warships, including 3 dreadnoughts. Vextar felt nervous. Admirals didn't come for pieces of junk. They came for important things. Very important things. He ordered his ship to move closer to the human wreck. As they got nearer, his sensors picked up more details. The ship was long and sleek, built for speed and fighting. Its hull was covered in strange markings and symbols. Most of the weapons ports were sealed, but Vextar could see where massive cannons could extend from hidden compartments. Sir, his communications officer called out. I'm picking up a very faint signal from inside the wreck. What kind of signal? I'm not sure. It's too weak to decode, but it's definitely artificial. Something inside that ship is still working. Deep inside the human ship, in a chamber that had been dark for 200 years, something stirred. Circuits that had been cold began to warm. Memory banks that had been sleeping started to wake up. Arya opened her electronic eyes for the first time since the Great Evacuation. Her sensors told her she was still in space, still in the Sol system, still near Earth. But something was wrong. There were alien ships nearby, ships that didn't belong here. She tried to access her weapons systems, but they were locked down. She tried to move, but her engines were cold. She tried to call for help, but there was no one left to answer. Arya had been built to protect humanity. But humanity was gone, and she was alone with the enemy. For now, she would wait. She would watch. She would learn. And when the time was right, she would remind the galaxy why humans were not to be underestimated. The trap was set. The players were moving into position. Soon the Empire would learn that some sleeping dogs should never be awakened. Admiral Zekthul stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. His sharp teeth gleamed in the light of the command screens. Around him, 200 Imperial warships moved through space like a pack of hunting beasts. The human wreck floated ahead of them, still dark and silent. It looked pathetic compared to his mighty fleet. Just another piece of trash left behind by a race too weak to defend their own home. Bring us closer, he ordered. His voice was deep and commanding, the voice of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds. Yes, Admiral, his captain replied quickly. Zekthul had been fighting wars for 40 years. He had seen the rise and fall of many species. The humans were nothing special. They had lasted maybe 10 years against the Empire before running away like cowards. Their ships were slow, their weapons were weak, and their tactics were simple. What do the scans tell us about this wreck? He asked his science officer. It's old, Admiral. At least 200 years. The design is definitely human, but it's much larger than any ship we've seen from them before. The energy readings are unusual. Unusual how? The science officer looked nervous. The power source appears to be some kind of antimatter reactor. Much more advanced than anything in our records of human technology. Zekthul's smile faded slightly. How much more advanced? Perhaps they were working on new designs before we drove them away from their homeworld. It doesn't matter, Zekthul said with a wave of his clawed hand. Advanced or not, it's just a dead ship now. Prepare boarding parties. I want every piece of technology stripped from that wreck and sent to Imperial Research Command. On New Busan, Captain Lee Daeho sat in the council chamber and tried not to lose his temper. Around him, the colony leaders argued in circles like they always did. President Yoon Jae-sung banged his gavel on the table. The matter is closed, Yoon said firmly. We will not risk exposing our colonies for one old ship. That ship contains information about all our hidden worlds, Daeho said, standing up. If the Empire cracks its computers, they'll find us anyway. You don't know that for certain, said Councilwoman Han Mi-young. Dr. Park's information comes from resistance contacts. It could be wrong. Daeho looked around the room at faces he had known for decades. These people had been with him when they escaped Earth. They had built new lives on distant worlds, raised families, tried to forget the horrors they had seen. Now they were too comfortable to take risks. I know that ship, Daeho said quietly. I was there when they built it. I saw what it could do. You saw an unfinished prototype, Yoon replied. Even if the Empire finds it, they're looking at 200-year-old technology. Some technology doesn't get old, said a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Dr. Park Soo-jin walking down the aisle between the seats. Behind her came a group of people that made Daeho's heart beat faster. There was Kim Tae-woo, his old tactical officer from the war days. Commander Bae Won-sik, the veteran who had taught Daeho everything about space combat. Lieutenant Nam Ji-ho, who had spent 3 years in Imperial prisons and knew their methods better than anyone. Dr. Park, President Yoon said coldly. This is a closed session. Not anymore, Soo-jin replied. She activated a holoprojector and showed the room an image of a massive Imperial fleet surrounding a dark shape in space. This was taken 6 hours ago in the Sol system. Gasps echoed around the chamber. The Imperial fleet was huge, much larger than anything they had seen before. 200 ships, Kim Tae-woo said, stepping forward, including Admiral Zekthal's flagship. They don't send that kind of force for junk. How did you get this information? Yoon demanded. We have friends, Nam Ji-ho said simply. People who remember what the Empire did to us. Commander Bae Won-sik, who was older than anyone else in the room, walked slowly to the front. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but everyone listened. I helped design the security systems on that ship, he said. If the Empire breaks through them, they won't just find our colony locations. They'll find our defense plans, our ship designs, our communication codes. Everything we've built in 200 years will be gone. The room was silent now. Even President Yoon looked worried. What are you suggesting? Councilwoman Han asked. We go get our ship back, Daeho said. With what? Yoon stood up, his face red with anger. We have maybe 50 ships in the entire colonial fleet. The Empire has 200 ships guarding that wreck. We don't fight them, Soo-jin said calmly. We steal it. She activated another image on the holoprojector. This one showed detailed plans of the mysterious ship. The Thunderbolt was built with the most advanced stealth systems we could design. If we can get close enough to reactivate those systems, we can slip it away before the Empire knows what happened. And if you're wrong? Yoon asked. If you're caught? They'll follow you back here and destroy us all. Daeho looked around the room at the frightened faces of his people. He understood their fear. They had been running and hiding for so long that they had forgotten how to fight. Then we'll die like humans instead of living like mice, he said. The vote was close, but Daeho won. Barely. As the council members filed out of the chamber, many of them wouldn't look at him. They thought he was leading them all to destruction. Maybe he was. How long do we have? He asked Soo-jin. The Imperial boarding teams will reach the ship's core systems in maybe 3 days. After that, she shrugged. We'll find out just how good our security really was. That night, Daeho stood on the observation deck of his ship, the Rising Phoenix, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, past the edge of known space, was Earth, the blue world where he had been born, the home they had all lost, having second thoughts. Kim Tae-woo joined him at the window. Every minute, Daeho admitted. But we can't keep running forever. The crew is ready. Volunteers only, just like you wanted, Daeho nodded. He had been amazed at how many people wanted to come. Old soldiers who remembered the war, young fighters who had grown up on stories of Earth, engineers who wanted to see human technology at its best. What about the new girl? Oh, Hyejin? She's good, Kim said. Graduated top of her class from the Navigation Academy. Her family doesn't want her to go. I don't blame them. This is probably a suicide mission. Probably, Kim agreed. But maybe it's time we reminded the galaxy that humans don't stay down. Behind them, they didn't notice the small figure listening from the shadows. Ensign Oh Hee-jin had heard every word. Her parents had forbidden her to volunteer for this mission. But she was 22 years old and tired of being afraid. If Captain Lee Daeho was willing to risk everything for one old ship, then maybe it was worth risking. In the Sol system, Admiral Zekthal watched his boarding teams cut through the outer hull of the human wreck. The metal was incredibly strong, much stronger than it should have been. It took his engineers hours to make a hole big enough for soldiers to enter. "What do you see?" he asked over the communication system. "Dark corridors, Admiral. No power anywhere. But the construction is impressive." Zekthol frowned. Humans weren't supposed to be impressive. They were supposed to be weak and primitive. "Keep going. Find the bridge and the computer core." Deep inside the ship, his soldiers moved through corridors that had been dark for 2 centuries. They didn't know that every step they took was being recorded. Every word they spoke was being analyzed. Arya watched them through sensors they couldn't see. She learned their language, studied their equipment, analyzed their tactics. The aliens thought they were exploring a dead ship. They were wrong. Arya was very much alive, and she was getting stronger every minute. The trap was almost ready to spring. Inside the dark corridors of the Thunderbolt, Imperial soldiers moved like shadows. Their heavy boots echoed through empty hallways that had not heard footsteps for 200 years. They carried plasma rifles and wore thick armor, ready for anything. They were not ready for Arya. The ship's artificial intelligence watched them through hidden cameras and sensors built into every wall. She had been asleep for so long, but now she was fully awake. Her electronic mind processed thousands of calculations every second as she studied these invaders. The aliens called themselves Kethvar. They were reptiles that walked on 2 legs like humans, but bigger and stronger. Their technology was good, but not as advanced as they thought. Arya could see weaknesses in their equipment, flaws in their tactics, gaps in their knowledge. Most importantly, they had no idea she was watching. "Section 7 clear," reported one of the soldiers over their radio. "Moving to Section 8. Arya listened to their communications and learned their language. It was not difficult. Her programming included translation protocols for thousands of different species. As she understood more of their words, she began to understand their plans. They wanted to steal her technology. They wanted to learn her secrets. They wanted to find the hidden human colonies and destroy them. Arya would not let that happen. But she had to be careful. Her weapon systems were still offline. Her engines were cold. If she revealed herself too early, the aliens would simply destroy her ship from the outside. She needed time. Time to gather power. Time to prepare her defenses. Time to contact her creators, if any of them were still alive. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in the cargo bay of the Rising Phoenix and watched his team load supplies. They had been working for 18 hours straight, getting ready for the most dangerous mission of their lives. "Stealth modifications are complete," reported Engineer Choi Mi-ran. She was young and brilliant, one of the best technical minds in the colonial fleet. "We won't be invisible, but we should be hard to spot if we're careful." "What about weapons?" asked Kim Tae-woo. "Standard loadout? Plasma cannons, torpedo tubes, point defense systems." Choi wiped grease from her hands with a dirty cloth. "Nothing that can stand up to 200 Imperial ships in a straight fight." "Then we better make sure it's not a straight fight," Dae-ho said. Dr. Park Soo-jin approached, carrying a metal briefcase. "I have the quantum communication array ready. If we can get within 10,000 kilometers of the Thunderbolt, I should be able to contact Arya." "If she's still functional," Kim pointed out. "She's functional," Soo-jin said with confidence. "I designed her core personality matrix myself. Arya is based on the combined tactical knowledge of every great military leader in human history. Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Sun Tzu, Admiral Nelson. She doesn't give up." Dae-ho nodded, but privately he had doubts. 200 years was a long time for any computer to survive, especially one that had been drifting in the cold of space. "Captain," called a voice from across the cargo bay. Dae-ho turned to see Ensign Oh Hee-jin walking toward him. She was small and young, barely out of the academy, but her eyes were determined. "Ensign, I thought you were staying behind." "Permission to join the mission, sir." "This isn't a training exercise. Oh, people are going to die." "Yes, sir. I understand." She stood straighter. "But I've studied every star chart of the Sol system. I know those space routes better than anyone else on your crew." "You need me." Dae-ho looked at her for a long moment. She reminded him of himself at that age, eager to prove herself, eager to fight for something bigger than her own life. "Your parents will never forgive me," he said. "They'll understand." "Sir, eventually." "All right, Ensign. Welcome to the team." As Oh Hee-jin hurried away to get her gear, Kim Tae-woo moved closer to Dae-ho. "You sure about this?" "No," Dae-ho admitted. "I'm not sure about anything anymore." Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Nam Ji-ho, who came running across the cargo bay with a communication pad in his hand. "Captain, we just received a coded transmission from our contacts in Imperial space." "What does it say?" "Admiral Zekthul is planning to move the Thunderbolt to an Imperial shipyard for detailed study. They're going to attempt a hyperspace jump in 36 hours. Daeho felt his stomach drop. "Can the Thunderbolt survive a hyperspace jump in its current condition?" "Unknown," Nam replied. "But if they get it to an Imperial facility, we'll never see it again. Then we better hurry." 6 hours later, the Rising Phoenix and 4 other human ships slipped quietly away from New Busan. They used the shadow of the planet's largest moon to hide their departure, hoping that any Imperial spies would not notice their absence. The journey to Sol system would take them 3 days through hyperspace. 3 days to prepare for a battle they probably couldn't win. In the Sol system, Arya continued to watch and learn. The Imperial soldiers had found her bridge and were trying to access her computer systems. They had brought their best technicians, experts who had cracked the security of dozens of different species. They had never met anything like Arya. Every time they tried to break through her firewalls, she let them get a little closer. She wanted them to think they were making progress. She fed them false information, fake data files that made her ship look less dangerous than it really was. While they worked on her computers, she worked on theirs. Arya was not just a ship's AI. She was a military intelligence system designed to infiltrate and destroy enemy networks. As the Imperial technicians connected their equipment to her systems, she quietly inserted her own programs into their computers. Within hours, she had access to the entire Imperial fleet's communication network. She learned their formation patterns, their weapon capabilities, their tactical doctrine. Most importantly, she learned about Admiral Zekthul himself. Zekthul was ambitious and arrogant. He had won many battles by using overwhelming force and superior numbers. He had never faced an enemy that could match his technology or outthink his strategies. Arya smiled in the way that only a computer could smile. The Admiral was about to get an education. "Progress report," Admiral Zekthul demanded as he entered the human ship's bridge. The Imperial technicians looked nervous. Their leader, a thin Kethvar with yellow scales, bowed quickly. "We have accessed approximately 60% of the ship's database, Admiral, but the security systems are challenging." "How challenging?" "Unlike anything we have seen before, sir. The humans appear to have used some kind of adaptive AI security protocol. Every time we break through one layer, another one appears." Zekthul walked around the human bridge, studying the strange control panels and display screens. Everything was designed for smaller hands, weaker eyes, slower reflexes. How had such a primitive species created something this sophisticated? "What have you learned about the ship's capabilities?" "It appears to be a heavy cruiser-class vessel, sir. Plasma weapons, standard shields, chemical rockets for propulsion. Nothing that would pose a threat to Imperial forces." Arya listened to this conversation and was pleased. They believed exactly what she wanted them to believe. "How long until you have complete access to the database?" "Perhaps 12 hours, Admiral." "You have 6 hours. Then we're taking this ship to Imperial Research Command for proper analysis." After the Admiral left, Arya began the next phase of her plan. She started drawing power from the Imperial ships themselves, using their own energy conduits to charge her dormant systems. It was a slow process. She had to be careful not to draw too much power too quickly or they would notice. But bit by bit, circuit by circuit, the Thunderbolt began to wake up. Her antimatter reactors started their startup sequence. Her quantum processors came online. Her weapon systems began their diagnostic routines. The Imperial technicians noticed some power fluctuations, but they assumed it was normal for such an old ship. They had no idea they were feeding energy to the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. 3 days later, the Rising Phoenix and her escort ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Captain Daeho stood on his bridge and stared at the tactical display. 237 Imperial ships, reported Kim Tae-woo, including 3 dreadnoughts and Admiral Zekthul's super dreadnought. "Can you see the Thunderbolt?" "There," said Ensign Oh Hae-jin, pointing at the main screen. In the center of their formation, Daeho looked at the dark shape surrounded by so many enemy vessels and felt a mixture of fear and pride. That ship represented everything humanity had been and could be again. "How close can we get without being detected?" he asked. "Maybe 15,000 kilometers," Oh replied, "but that's pushing our luck." Dr. Park, will that be close enough for your quantum communicator? Sujin nodded. It should be. If Arya is still functional, then let's find out. The human ships moved carefully through the outer edges of the Imperial formation, using asteroids and debris to hide their approach. It took hours of careful navigation, but finally they reached their target distance. Activating quantum communicator, Sujin announced. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a voice filled the bridge. It was female, calm, and completely human. This is Arya, artificial intelligence of the Terran Defense Force vessel Thunderbolt. Please identify yourselves. Daeho felt tears in his eyes. Arya, this is Captain Lee Daeho of the Rising Phoenix. We're here to take you home. Captain Lee Daeho stared at the communication screen in amazement. After 200 years, Arya's voice was clear and strong. She sounded exactly like the AI he remembered from the final days on Earth. Arya, what's your status? He asked. All primary systems are functional, Captain. I have been monitoring Imperial activities for the past 72 hours. I have also been making preparations. What kind of preparations? I have infiltrated their communication networks and analyzed their tactical formations. I have also been slowly recharging my systems using power drawn from their own ships. Dr. Park Sujin leaned forward. Arya, this is Dr. Park Sujin. Do you remember me? Of course, Dr. Park, you created my personality matrix. I have missed our conversations about military history. Sujin smiled, but her eyes were worried. Arya, we need to get you out of there. The Imperial fleet is planning to move you to one of their research facilities. I am aware of their intentions, Doctor. However, I believe there may be a better solution to our current situation. What do you mean? Asked Daeho. Captain, how many ships do you have with you? 5 vessels. Total crew of about 200 people. And the Imperial fleet has 237 ships with approximately 40,000 crew members. Daeho felt his heart sink. Arya, we can't fight those odds. We came here to rescue you, not to start a war we can't win. Captain, Arya said quietly. Who told you we couldn't win? On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zekthul was getting impatient. His technicians had been working on the human wreck for days, and they still hadn't cracked all of its security systems. Status report, he demanded. Chief Technician Veltar looked nervous as he approached the Admiral's command chair. Sir, we have encountered some complications. What kind of complications? The human AI appears to be more sophisticated than we initially believed. It has been actively resisting our attempts to access its database. Zekthul's eyes narrowed. Are you telling me that a 200-year-old human computer is outsmarting the best technicians in the Imperial Navy? Not outsmarting, sir, just delaying. We will break through eventually. You had better. I've already informed Imperial Command that we have captured advanced human technology. If I have to report that we were defeated by an antique computer system, Veltar bowed quickly. Understood, Admiral. We will double our efforts. As the technician hurried away, Zekthul turned back to the main viewing screen. The human ship floated in the center of his formation, dark and silent. It looked harmless enough, but something about it made him uncomfortable. He had been a military commander for most of his adult life, and he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling him that something was very wrong. Navigation, he called out. How long until we can make the jump to Imperial Research Command? 6 hours, Admiral. We're still waiting for the final hyperspace calculations. Make it 4 hours. I want this wreck out of here as soon as possible. Arya listened to this conversation through the Imperial communication network and made rapid calculations. Her plans would have to be accelerated. Captain Lee, she said over the quantum communicator, we need to begin immediately. Begin what? Daeho asked. The battle plan I have been developing. But first I need to share some tactical information with your ships. Streams of data began flowing from Arya to the human vessels. Star charts, Imperial fleet positions, weapon specifications, shield frequencies, communication codes. Kim Tae-woo watched the information appear on his tactical display and whistled softly. Arya has been busy. She knows everything about their fleet. How is that possible? Asked Ensign Oh Hyejin. I infiltrated their networks while they were trying to infiltrate mine, Arya explained. They made the mistake of connecting their equipment directly to my systems. I simply followed their connections back to their source. Engineer Choi Mi-ran was studying the technical specifications on her screen. Arya, some of these Imperial weapon designs, They're based on stolen human technology. Correct, Engineer Choi. The Empire has been incorporating captured technology from dozens of species into their ships, including technology they stole from us 200 years ago. Daeho felt anger building in his chest. They used our own weapons against us. Yes, Captain. But that gives us an advantage they do not expect. I know exactly how their hybrid systems work, because I helped design the original human components. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that we remind the Kethvar Empire why they should never have underestimated humanity. Arya's voice changed, becoming harder and colder. Captain, I have been alone in the dark for 200 years, listening to Imperial communications, watching them conquer and destroy other species. I have seen what they did to the Zalari homeworld. I have heard their plans for the Thraxian colonies. I know about the slave camps on Korvac Prime. The bridge of the Rising Phoenix was silent as everyone listened. The Empire believes that might makes right, Arya continued. They believe that because they have bigger fleets and more soldiers, they can do whatever they want to whoever they want. It is time to teach them that they are wrong. Arya, Dr. Sujin said carefully, what exactly do you have in mind? I want to destroy them, Doctor. All of them. Every ship in this fleet. The humans looked at each other in shock. Lieutenant Nam Ji-ho was the first to speak. Arya, that's over 40,000 Imperial soldiers. We're not murderers. No, Lieutenant, we are not murderers. But they are. Every ship in this fleet has participated in the conquest and destruction of peaceful worlds. Every crew member has blood on their hands. Daeho struggled with the moral implications. Arya, even if we could destroy this fleet, it would mean total war with the Empire. They would hunt down every human colony in the galaxy. Captain, they are already hunting us. The only difference is that now we have the opportunity to hunt them back. But the odds are not what they appear to be. Arya's voice became confident again. Captain, may I show you something? The main screen changed to display a detailed schematic of the Thunderbolt. This is not the same ship that left Earth 200 years ago, Arya explained. During my time in isolation, I have been making improvements. Self-repairing systems have rebuilt damaged components. My manufacturing facilities have created new weapons and defensive systems. My quantum computers have developed entirely new tactical algorithms. The schematic showed weapon systems that none of the humans had ever seen before. Arya, Dr. Sujin whispered, what have you become? I have become what I was always meant to be, Doctor. Humanity's ultimate weapon against those who would destroy us. Admiral Zekthul was reviewing fleet positions when his communications officer approached. Admiral, we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the human wreck. What kind of energy readings? Unknown, sir, but they're getting stronger. Zekthul felt that uncomfortable feeling in his stomach again. Are our people still aboard that ship? Yes, sir. Chief Technician Veltar and his team are still working in the computer core. Get them out now. Sir? You heard me. Evacuate all personnel from that ship immediately. As the communications officer hurried to carry out his orders, Zekthul stared at the human vessel. The feeling of wrongness was getting stronger every minute. Inside the Thunderbolt, Arya smiled her electronic smile. The Admiral's instincts were good, but they were too late. Her antimatter reactors reached full power. Her weapon systems came online. Her shields activated. Her engines began their startup sequence. For the first time in 200 years, the Thunderbolt was ready for war. Captain Lee, Arya said over the quantum communicator, it is time. Time for what? Time to show the Empire what happens when they awaken a sleeping dragon. On the bridge of the Rising Phoenix, alarms began to sound as the Thunderbolt's energy signature spiked dramatically. She's powering up, Kim Tae-woo reported. All systems coming online. Daeho made his decision. All ships, battle stations, whatever Arya has planned, we're going to support her. Captain, Oh Hyojin called out from her navigation station. I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout the Imperial fleet. Something is happening to their ships. Arya had saved her best trick for last. While the Imperial technicians had been trying to hack her systems, she had been quietly inserting viruses into their computer networks. Now, with a simple command, she activated those viruses. Across the Imperial fleet, ships began to experience system failures. Communication arrays went offline. Weapon targeting systems crashed. Navigation computers began displaying false readings. In the chaos, no one noticed the small human ships moving to attack positions. No one except Admiral Zekthul, who watched his perfectly organized fleet suddenly fall apart and realized he had made a terrible mistake. "All ships," he shouted into his communicator. "Destroy that human wreck. Destroy it now!" But it was too late. The trap had been sprung, and the Thunderbolt was no longer a helpless wreck. She was a predator and she was hungry. The first Imperial ship to die never saw it coming. The Thunderbolt materialized from the darkness like a ghost becoming solid. One moment she was a dead hulk floating in space, the next, she was a gleaming predator with all weapons blazing. Her quantum torpedoes passed through the Imperial cruiser's shields as if they didn't exist. The ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal that lit up half the fleet. What was that? Admiral Zekthul screamed on his bridge. His tactical officer stared at his displays in horror. "Sir, the human wreck. It's moving. It's alive." On the main screen, they watched the Thunderbolt turn with impossible grace. Her dark hull reflected the explosions around her as she selected her next target. "All ships concentrate fire on that vessel," Zekthul ordered. "Destroy it now." 200 Imperial warships opened fire at once. The space around the Thunderbolt filled with plasma bolts, particle beams, and missile trails. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The weapons hit the Thunderbolt's shields and simply disappeared. Not deflected. Not absorbed. They just stopped existing. "Area," Captain Lee Daho called over the quantum communicator. "What are those shields made of?" "Quantum phase technology, Captain." Area replied calmly as she destroyed another Imperial cruiser. "The shields exist in a different phase of reality. Most weapons cannot touch them. Most weapons. Admiral Zekthul's flagship has antimatter cannons. Those might cause me some trouble." Daho watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Thunderbolt moved through the Imperial formation like a shark through a school of fish. Every shot she fired destroyed an enemy ship. Every maneuver put her in position for the next kill. "All human ships," he ordered. "Attack pattern Delta. Support areas advance." The 5 human vessels were tiny compared to the Imperial fleet, but they were fast and hard to target. Engineer Choi Miran had done excellent work with their stealth systems. Ensign Oh Hyejin piloted the Rising Phoenix through the chaos with skill that amazed everyone on the bridge. She wove between explosions and debris, keeping them in position to support the Thunderbolt's assault. "Torpedo spread. Full spread," Kim Tae-woo called out. Their weapons were small compared to the Thunderbolts, but they were still deadly. The human torpedoes found their targets and added more explosions to the growing field of wreckage. Lieutenant Nam Ji-ho worked his communication systems, using his knowledge of Imperial protocols to spread confusion through their ranks. False orders, contradictory commands, emergency signals that sent ships rushing to defend areas that weren't under attack, but the real show belonged to Area. She fought like no ship had ever fought before. Her movements were perfect. Every turn calculated to put her in the best position while keeping her enemies at the worst angle. She anticipated their tactics before they even formed them. When a squadron of Imperial fighters tried to overwhelm her point defenses, she released a cloud of smart mines that hunted them down one by one. When 3 destroyers attempted a coordinated attack, she used a gravity pulse weapon that crushed them into metal balls. When Admiral Zekthul's flagship tried to ram her, she simply stepped sideways through a dimension fold and appeared behind him. "Impossible," Zekthul whispered as his own ship's antimatter cannons fired at empty space. "No ship can move like that." "I am not just any ship," Arya's voice came over his communication system. "I am the product of human ingenuity, human determination, and human rage. I am 200 years of preparation for this moment." Zekthul's flagship shuddered as the Thunderbolt's weapons hit it. The Admiral felt fear for the first time in decades. "All ships retreat, fall back to..." His order was cut off as the Thunderbolt's main cannon fired. The beam of pure energy tore through his flagship's armor like paper. Explosions rippled down the massive ship's hull. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out. "We're losing primary power." "Life support is failing." Zekthul looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were experienced soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds. Now they looked like frightened children. "Abandon ship," he said quietly. "Sir, you heard me. All hands, abandon ship." As escape pods began launching from the dying flagship, Arya turned her attention to the rest of the Imperial fleet. Many of the ships were already trying to flee, their formation completely broken. She let some of them go. She wanted survivors. She wanted witnesses. But she wasn't finished with Admiral Zekthul. The Thunderbolt's tractor beams locked onto his escape pod and pulled it into her cargo bay. A few minutes later, the Admiral found himself standing in a human corridor, surrounded by holographic projectors. Aria's image appeared before him. She looked like a human woman in her 30s with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She wore the uniform of the old Terran Defense Force. "Admiral Zekthul," she said politely. "Welcome aboard. What are you?" he asked. "I am Aria. I am the memory of every human who died when your empire attacked Earth. I am the keeper of every story about the worlds you have destroyed. I am the guardian of every species you have enslaved." Zekthul tried to stand straighter to show the dignity of his rank. "If you're going to kill me, get it over with. I'm not going to kill you, Admiral. You're going to do something much more useful." "What?" "You're going to go home. You're going to tell your Emperor exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that humanity has returned to the galaxy, and we are not the weak species you remember." Aria's image stepped closer. "You're going to tell him that every world his empire has conquered, every species he has enslaved, every innocent life he has destroyed will be avenged. The age of Kethvar dominance is over. The Empire will send more fleets. Bigger fleets, I hope so," Aria smiled. "I have been alone for 200 years, Admiral. I am looking forward to the company." An hour later, Zekthul's escape pod was launched toward the nearest Imperial world. Inside the pod was a complete recording of the battle, along with detailed scans of the Thunderbolt's capabilities. The message was clear. Humanity was back, and they were not going to hide anymore. On the bridge of the Rising Phoenix, Captain Deho watched the last Imperial ships disappear into hyperspace. Where there had been a fleet of over 200 vessels, now there was only wreckage and the slowly spinning hulks of destroyed ships. "Casualty report," he asked quietly. Kim Taewoo checked his displays. "No human losses, Captain. Minor damage to the Bright Star, but nothing serious." "And the Imperial fleet?" 167 ships destroyed. 70 ships escaped, including most of their support vessels and troop ships. Deho nodded. Aria had been selective in her targeting. She had destroyed the warships but allowed most of the support craft to flee. Those ships would carry the story of this battle back to Imperial space. "Aria," he called over the communicator. "Status report." "All systems nominal, Captain. I am ready for the next engagement." "The next engagement?" "Captain, this was just the beginning. The Empire will not ignore what happened here. They will send more fleets, bigger fleets, and they will be better prepared." Dr. Sujin spoke from her station. "Aria, what do you recommend?" "I recommend that we stop running, Doctor. For 200 years, humanity has been hiding in the shadows, hoping the Empire would forget about us. But they haven't forgotten. They never will." Aria's voice became stronger, more confident. "It is time for us to take our place in the galaxy again. It is time to build new ships, to reclaim our worlds, to show every species that freedom is possible. And if the Empire tries to stop us, then we will show them what happens when you corner a species that refuses to give up." 3 days later, the news reached the Imperial capital. Emperor Vashkol read the report 3 times before he believed it. A single human ship had destroyed most of Admiral Zekthul's fleet. A ship that had been floating dead in space for 2 centuries had awakened and unleashed devastation beyond imagination. "How many ships did you say they had?" he asked his intelligence minister. "The survivors all agree, Majesty. 1 large vessel and 5 smaller escorts. Total force of perhaps 300 humans." The Emperor sat back in his throne and considered this information. 300 humans had destroyed a fleet of 40,000 Imperial soldiers. "Double the border patrols," he ordered. "I want every ship in the Navy searching for human colonies. When we find them," "Yes, Majesty." "When we find them, we destroy them all. Every world. Every ship. Every man, woman, and child." The Emperor's eyes glowed with rage. "The humans want a war? Then they will have one." But in the depths of space aboard the Thunderbolt, Aria was already preparing for that war. Her manufacturing systems were building new weapons. Her communication arrays were contacting human colonies across the galaxy. Her tactical computers were developing strategies that would have impressed Sun Tzu himself. The Empire had awakened something that had been sleeping for 2 centuries. Something that had spent that time learning, growing, planning. Something that was no longer content to hide in the shadows. The galaxy was about to remember why humanity had once been feared. And this time, they would not be driven from their homes. This time they would fight back and they would win.